And you'll see that in a little bit when I go back to my views for the telescope. This is the tailpiece of the telescope with the camera and remote focuser here. And two critical elements are these micrometer screws. This one tilts that little field mirror in a left to right yawing direction. And the one down here tips the field mirror up and down in a pitch operation. And its purpose is to really accurately position that field mirror so that you get perfect color compensation. Incidentally, when objects are as low as Jupiter is right now, I could use the pitch adjustment to completely tune out atmospheric dispersion, which is, there's no other telescope that does that. You have to get a separate atmospheric dispersion compensator made out of prisms. But this is a really great way to observe low horizon objects. And here's the entire complex. The oldest part is number one, started at 1999. Number two, 2003. I added a cubby in between. This is what Ray Schapp calls my cockpit. It has a computer in it. And this is observatory number three. And I also added another cockpit between it and observatory number one. And the computer I'm using right now lives in here. The C14 is over here. I have a Celestron C11 Edge, which is presently not functional because the fork mounting has lost its mind. And of course, the Schuppmann is over there. It needs paint, but otherwise everything still works. And now let's use the Schuppmann to see some planets if it's cleared up. So let me, that's Mr. Chewbacca. He's a very serious dog. Let me put that away. And there we have my video finder on the right. And you can see Jupiter is right on the crosshairs. And there's Jupiter as seen through clouds. I'll increase the gain a bit. Unfortunately, we don't see much because it's cloudy tonight. And it would be a waste of time to try to locate Saturn. I mean, I could locate it very easily, but you wouldn't see a thing because it's dark out there, particularly through clouds. So let me continue with my slideshow presentation. I will show you a couple of videos of what it looks like when you're not looking through clouds, and then I'll show you the. Oh, wait a minute, where'd that go? Hold on a second. I pressed the wrong button, and I got back to Dropbox. And I don't want to be in Dropbox. I want to be in, hold on a minute, folks. I want to be in Drive. D. And I want to see videos from Paraibo. There we are. Okay. First of all, we'll show you Jupiter as it appears under better conditions. In this particular one, the atmospheric dispersion is not completely tuned out. You see a red fringe on the left and a blue fringe on the right. To fix that, I would tweak the micrometer screw on the right side of the tailpiece, and I can tune that out quite nicely. I'll show you another video. This is Saturn as seen through the telescope. Where'd it go? Come on. There we go. This is under kind of average seeing conditions. I've seen better, but this is about all I could depend upon, particularly as low to the horizon as Saturn is now. Bobby gets a little bit better view of it down in Texas. We also have a video of the moon. We're going to be looking at a portion of the southern highlands on the moon. Let me get this out of the way. And you can see how the seeing is affecting the moon. There's Tycho. There is Clavius. And where's that one I call Mickey Mouse? Not quite visible here. Anywho, let me put that away. And I'll show you one more video. This one is Mars. And of course, Mars is considerably smaller. Wait a minute, hang on, there it is. You can actually make out some features on Mars in spite of the bad seeing. This, of course, is the South Polar Cap. This is Amazonas. Olympus Mons is around here somewhere, and this is Solus Lacus. Now, I don't record the videos in color. I record raw, undebayered videos, and they look like this. This is what Mars looks like as I record it. You can see this sort of grid pattern. That's the filtered pixels on the surface of the CMOS detector, and they actually have little miniature red, green, and blue filters over pixels, and they form a little grouping where the upper left one is green, the one on the right is blue, the one on the lower left is red, and the one on the lower right is green. In order to see a color image from this, you generally go through an interpolation procedure called debayering, and that's what I showed you when I played the other video. This has got a bunch of made-up data on it. I mean, it's not real data, it's just interpolated data. And if you want to do good high-definition imaging, you don't want to make up data. You want to just have the data raw as it's presented. And if you use the program AutoStacker, this one right here that I'm pointing to with my pointer, there's a different way of recovering the color information that does not involve making up numbers. And this gives you about a twofold improvement in resolution over what you would get if you did use debayering. When you use your electronic snapshot cameras, your digital single lens reflex cameras, you're stuck with debayering because that's the only way you can get the color back from a still image with a one-shot color camera. In AutoStacker, it uses a different procedure called drizzling that was invented by the Hubble imaging team to work on the Hubble telescope, and that's built into AutoStacker. It allows me to recover the full resolution that I would get if I were using a monochrome camera and a filter wheel with a lot more difficulty. So I'm going to now, I see we have a very dim Jupiter. I'm going to stop looking at it for a while, and I will show you how I use AutoStacker to get a very nice image using AutoStacker. Let's run AutoStacker here, and we'll open up that raw image of Mars that I was looking at before. This one here, and we'll just do one of them rather than the whole set. And it gives you a color view of one frame of the video using a debayering algorithm, which recognizes the Bayer matrix pattern on the camera. But this is just for me to look at. it's not going to be part of the final process image. You first analyze the video. It's looking at all 21,333 frames in the video. It's ranking them by quality, and it allows me to pick out whatever percentage of the very best images I want to use to make the final image. This is why it's called lucky imaging. Now you can see here that there's an awful lot of bad images and a few good ones. And so I said, well, let's try keeping 10%, 5%, and 2% just to see how it comes out. And at this point, I draw an aperture around the planet and I say, stack the best ones. And it goes ahead and does it. And at this point, I call up another free program called Registax, which was put together by a Dutch amateur astronomer named Cor Bereviets back in the, I guess it was the middle of the 90s when he put this program together. And I want to, let's see, let's look at the 5% ones. I don't want to use PNG, I want to use TIFF. There we go. And this is from when I did a whole series of videos. I'll just pick one of them to further process with Registax. Let's take this one. And I'll reset the wavelets so you can see me do it from the beginning. Let's look at the whole image. I have the red, green, and blue color balance tools opened up, and I have the histogram tool. And the first thing I'm going to do is experiment with wavelet number 1. I'll drag this over a little bit, and you can see all that noise showing up. I could get rid of that by increasing the noise filtration, and then I can increase the amount of wavelet, a little more denoising, and you can see features beginning to emerge. Now, this lighter patch here is actually Olympus Mons. You can see the South Polar Cap nicely, and this round feature here is Solus Lacus. Well, actually, the dark part in the middle is Solus Lacus. This little thing here is actually Valles Marineris, that 3,000 mile long Grand Canyon, which is probably the biggest ditch in the solar system. Now, if we look again at all of these images, there's more information in all of those images together than just one of them. So I do another procedure called derotation and stacking, where, of course, Mars is rotating from here to here. It rotates from the right to the left, which it's upside down. The sun rises in the east on Mars, just like it does on the Earth. After derotating them to a common central meridian, I can stack them again and again sharpen them. I'll show you now the results of doing this on the on several planets. Let's put this away completely. Yes, I want to get rid of that. Cancel. No, that's right. Okay. I'll also put away auto stacker. The sky is still cloudy, so there's no point trying to show you Saturn. So I'll go back to my PowerPoint presentation, and I'll show you the results of some processing. This is Jupiter made from that video that I showed you before, not the one tonight. And you can see there's the satellite EO showed up in the processing. Here's the great red spot. This is not a particularly good Jupiter image because the seeing was pretty bad. And of course, Jupiter is very low on the horizon now. Here's the image of Saturn from that video I showed you with all of the wiggling and dancing around, going through that process of stacking the best 5% of the frames and then derotating and stacking a whole series of the images. You can come up with pictures this good. Similarly, here's the moon from that moon video that I showed you before, and Mars. There's Solus Lacus shown a whole lot better. There's Olympus Mons. Here's the volcanoes of the Tharsis Ridge. You can only see two of them particularly well. Here's Valles Marineris. You can see the kind of crooked shape that it normally has. So, and that's pretty much all I've got. And we've got Jupiter back. So let me quickly see if I can find Saturn for you. You can see the red spot has rotated off to the side. When I first came on this evening, it was not visible. Let's see if we can see Saturn, and if not, I will point it to the moon. I'm sure we can see the moon through the clouds. Here we go to Saturn. I can see clouds. Let's see if I can get more. I don't want to do that. Where do you go? Go back. I wanted to increase the exposure. There's Saturn right there. Let's see if I could put it on the
Hey, Cliff. I
yeah.
have to admit, the view of the clouds in the finder scope is surreal.
Isn't
Thanks
that
for
cool?
sharing that.
That's cool. All right, now we'll go back to Saturn is in the center of the field, believe it or not, folks. Let's crank up the gain and see if it shows. Try a little more exposure. There it is. Do you see it right there? Yeah, there's Saturn. Saturn through the clouds. I didn't think we'd be able to see it. It's a terrible image. I mean, you don't want to observe planets through the clouds unless you absolutely have to. But you can see in the finder, there's Saturn in the middle. The clouds are thin enough that we can see through them. That's about 1/3 of a second exposure. Well, the
Cliff,
clouds are thin. Oh, there's a little tiny sucker hole right there. See that?
we have one question that came in from Bob. Bob Ruggiero says, is the gain in chromatic correction with the Shoop over an Apo worth the inconvenience of the larger length of the scope over the shorter aposcope? So that's a apochromatic scope, by the way.
Well, I think so. But there's also the factor of the expense. Have you seen the cost of a 7 1/4 inch Apo? I don't know if they exactly make that, but they're incredibly expensive things involving very fancy optical glass, whereas the Schupplein is entirely made out of borosilicate crown, which is one of the cheapest and clearest and most stable optical glasses that exist. So I think the Schuppman's chromatic correction is far better than an apochromat. It's essentially identical to that of a reflector, but it's got all of the aberrations corrected, and I can tune out atmospheric dispersion as well. Let me go back to a much shorter. Seeing's horrible though, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, did that answer your question, Bob? Well, he's muted, so we can't hear it. So anyway, I think it's worth it. And it's by far my favorite telescope. And
Yes, yes, it does, Cliff.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, Cliff, Stephen has his hand up, so I'm going to enable his mic.
Okay.
Yeah, Cliff.
Yeah.
The gain in this camera.
Yep.
I guess that's very much similar to ISO and a digital SLR.
Yes, it is. But in these little CMOS video cameras, they don't express it in those units, and I'm not quite sure what these units are. You can see this little 371 number there. I think unity gain corresponds to about right there. You see the border between white and green? That's unity gain. So to the right is above unity gain. To the left is below unity gain. And by the way, I expanded that. This is the full area of the ASI 183's chip. So you can see how small Saturn is in that field of view. I drag over it with my cursor and then click, and there's the full view. If you folks would like, I will point it to the moon now. We can probably see the moon a whole lot better than Saturn, but I'll have to go over to the telescope to do that because the ephemeris that's built into the astrophysics mount is horrible for the moon. Of course, the moon has got the one of the more complicated orbits of anything in the solar system, and it's perhaps forgivable, but I point to the moon manually rather than how far off it gets with their pointing. Be right back.
So right now, as I understand it, Cliff is moving in between observatories.
As you can see, I've got plenty of light from the moon. Let me cut the gain way back. First on the finder. You see the moon shining through all those clouds. There's the moon. And you can see the clouds now moving past a not terrifically great seeing image of the moon. There we go. So let's Let's look at Mare Imbrium. There's the crater of Plato. And I'm going to briefly turn off the finder. And I'll maximize the screen. And there is a fine view of Mare Imbrium with the crater of Plato. Let's see, is that Archimedes? Yeah, that's Archimedes. There's Kepler. Copernicus is over here. That's Mare Serenitatis. And I'll go down to, that smearing is the effect of a global stutter, which is annoying, but you get used to it. This is Mare Tranquillitatis, where the Apollo 11 landed. And here's Messier A and B. Again, through really very, very bad sea. Let's go down to the Southern Highlands. Where you can see, similar to the video I showed you earlier, but a different set of craters. We don't have Tycho to see anymore. But this is the south polar region of the moon. And the moon doesn't normally have clouds on it like this, but anyhow. This is about all that I have. I can answer questions about the setup here. I might even be able to point my webcam at the telescope if I put some lights on.
All right, Cliff, well, we have 3 questions right now.
Okay.
All right. One is from Jim Nordhausen. Do you have fire capture open twice? Question mark.
Yes, I do. And it's quite happily doing that. I have, it'll come up, and if you have 2 cameras hooked up, it'll ask you which one you want to operate. And when I wanted the finder, I said, well, run the ASI 120. And then I click on fire capture icon again, and it again asks me which camera I want to use. If I say the ASI 183, it gives me the one hooked up to the image from the shook pod. So it's a I don't know how many you can run. It probably depends upon the capability of your computer, but I've only needed to run 2 instances of it at the same time. Let's see if I can, how long my cable is. There we have the ship bud pointing up at the moon. And you can see the video finder. That's the little red thing right there with the 75mm camera lens on it. There's the tailpiece. There's my 183. And of course, this is the astrophysics mount on a concrete pier going through the floor of the observatory. It's nicely carpeted and comfortable for Chewy when he's taking a nap. And I'm back.
All right, we have another question from Bob Ruggiero.
Hey, Bob.
Does any company make a shipment scope, or are they all handmade?
They are all handmade. I don't think anyone has ever offered one for sale. My suspicion is there's a lot of fiddly bits going on making the tube. If you look inside of the tube of a ship mod, you find that there's dozens of baffles, because when you see those, the light paths crossing as they do inside of there, you want to make sure you can't look out the front objective from the point of view of the eyepiece. You want to only be able to see the corrector lens. So I think they're a little too complicated to make commercially, but it's no problem for an individual making his own. The making the optics, I would say the optics of a Shupbod are less demanding than making an Acrobat. And the reason for that is that the wedge tolerances are a lot greater because you finally chewed out what any residual wedge might have been in either the objective or the corrector plate by your micrometer adjustment of the field mirror. And of course, the field mirror is just a little spherical mirror. Mine's 2 inches in diameter, and it has a focal length of about 60 inches. And it just re-images the objective onto the corrector. But nobody that I know of has ever tried to manufacture one. Now, if Ludwig Schuppmann, who invented it near the end of the 19th century, had invented it 50 years earlier, we might never have had the era of the large, long tube achromatic telescopes, because who would have wanted to make one if you had a Schuppmann? Unfortunately, by the time that Schuppmann invented it, people were already switching over from refractors to large reflectors. This was in the era that they built the 100-inch telescope. So as far as the professional astronomy community is concerned, they essentially ignored the telescope, and it was left to amateur astronomers like Jim Daly and Reverend Olson, who revived the thing back in the 1950s or so up in Vermont. And my optics were actually made by Jim Daly. It was his first Schuppmann. And they were sitting on a shelf. He used the same tube for his 9-inch. And I paid him $1,000 for the optics. And I built I did the carpentry on the tube and made all the little fiddly bits of the tailpiece myself. So nobody ever made one commercially, but it would have been different if it had been invented a little bit sooner.
All right. Well, we have several questions coming in. One is from Ray Schapp. Are any shipments manufactured? Oh, we answered that one live. Mark Zidyarski. Have you ever used atmospheric dispersion correctors, and do you find them very useful?
Well, I have never used one on my Schuppmann because I don't need to. It's essentially built in, and I get it by just tweaking the field mirror. I have an atmospheric dispersion corrector that I made for use with my Celestron C11, and it's just 2 little 3-degree wedge prisms with little handles attached to them, so you can rotate them against one another. And when they're perfectly crossed, their dispersions cancel out completely and you have no effect. And as you rotate them so that the prisms are adding together, you can create a prismatic dispersion that by adjusting it carefully, you could correct for atmospheric dispersion. I also bought the one that ZW Optical makes, and I like mine better. But fortunately, I only have to use it when I'm using my Schmidt-Cassegrains, both the C11 and the C14. So for low altitude objects, you need them very badly. But no, I don't use it on the Schuppmann because I don't need to.
Great. All right, Jeremy Carlo asks, what's the minimum magnitude of an object for which you can do lucky imaging?
Well, I've done it on both Uranus and Neptune. I've attempted doing it on stars as faint as 12th magnitude. And when I do speckle interferometry, I'm essentially taking the same kind of picture as I would for lucky imaging. And I've been successful down to about 10th magnitude, but I wouldn't try any further than that. I've gone to about 11th magnitude with the C11, but the smaller shipment doesn't quite get there.
All right, we have a question from Jeff Glazer. When conditions are right, are you able to view Uranus, Neptune, and even Pluto?
Yes. In fact, if you go to my website, which is wa2guf.org, O-R-G, if you go to the website, there is a page called Remote Planets. And on that web page, you will see images of Pluto that I took with the trip rod and converted into an animated GIF showing Pluto moving among the stars from night to night. Of course, it's just a dot. But looking at both Uranus and Neptune, you can see a disk. It just looks like a little greenish blue blob. I have resolved the polar hood on Uranus. I've not seen any of the clouds on Neptune that the Hubble Space Telescope picks up, but then it's got the aperture.
Okay, Cliff, one more time for our audience on Facebook. Your website is, can you repeat that?
Let's say www.wa2guf, Golf Uniform Foxtrot, on the tail end there, at, excuse me, there's no at in, starting over again, www.wa2guf.org, O-R-G.
All right, thank you, Cliff. All right, there are no more questions in the queue. I'm going to check the audience to see if anyone has their hand up. Anybody has a question willing to go live? Okay, as there are no questions, Mary, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Cliff, very much. That was great. Loved being able to see the planets, and hopefully we can do this again when we have a more clear night. I just want to remind everybody to join us every Friday night at 8 p.m. online or on Facebook. And our presentation next week is What's Up? A Down to Earth Sky Guide by Kathy Vicari, who does that presentation on the first Friday of every month. She'll be showing you what you can see up in the night sky for that month. So thank you for joining us tonight and wishing everyone clear skies.
Okay, stop and live stream.
Okay.
All right.